Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. The push for answers around their loved one's death.
He wanted to be happy.
What happened in the final days of a young Squamish man's life as he struggled with mental illness. Plus, the challenge for BC organizations to find volunteers as demand for programs soars.
The quantity of children needing a mentor be the highest.
Why some say they may have to shut down. And an in-depth look at soaring grocery prices.
I personally save thousands of dollars a year in groceries by just going online and using different apps.
First 3 rows last year were high trellises of Romano beans.
And how Canadians are getting creative to cut costs.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. Family members of a young Squamish man who died by suicide are pleading for answers about his final stay in hospital. Aaron Sanio had struggled with mental illness since his teens. In June of 2021, after 5 days in North Vancouver's Hope Centre, he killed himself. As Balpuri reports, the family says Sanio died because of a failure to follow policy.
On lui envoie des becs. On lui envoie des becs. Puis tu lui donnes de l'amour.
3-year-old Gabby's papa lives in her heart.
Aaron was so amazing and caring and generous, and he wanted to be happy.
30-year-old Aaron Sanyo ran his own transportation tech company in Squamish. He was a musician, an artist, a lover of the outdoors. Those who knew him say he was simply good at everything, but he also struggled with mental illness.
Aaron did not want to die.
Yet the 30-year-old took his own life. He'd been in and out of treatment, most recently under involuntary care for 5 days at Lionsgate Hospital's Hope Centre. Phone records show his father, who lives in Washington, D.C., called the centre 8 times during those days to discuss details of his son's history with mental illness.
I said, I want to talk to a professional so I can share what we know, because I think it's material. And frankly, we think that he needs to stay there for a much longer period of time.
There was no callback, despite a Vancouver coastal health policy that directs treatment providers to consider all relevant information from families and include them in patient recovery plans. In 2016, there was a coroner's inquest into the suicide of 3 patients shortly after they were discharged from Abbotsford Hospital. Family involvement, or the lack of it, was among the concerns it addressed. The jury recommended Vancouver Coastal's policy as a template for other health authorities. Vancouver Coastal cited privacy issues in refusing to talk to CBC about Aaron Sanyo.
Frankly, if the policy were acted on, I could have benefited from knowing from the professionals what I could do to be helpful. And I am sure that had they known what we knew, that they would never have released him. Had that policy been executed, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
The day Aaron was discharged, his girlfriend at the time picked him up.
When he started to drink again and I was in Montreal, I didn't really know what to do anymore to help him.
6 days later, Aaron killed himself.
I just thought about my daughter, that she didn't have any dad anymore.
A dad his family believes would still be fighting to get better if only there had been communication. Balpuri, CBC News, Vancouver.
2 men have been charged in a 2017 machete attack in Oak Bay. Nermeen Ali Reza was alone inside her house on the morning of April 25th, 2017, when a stranger broke in and slashed at her arm and hand. Now, 30-year-old Casper Handspiker and 52-year-old Christopher Standell are charged in connection with the attack. Handspiker remains in custody and is scheduled to make his next court appearance later this month. Standell has been ordered to stand trial in BC Supreme Court. Meanwhile, VPD Chief Adam Palmer has had his contract extended until 2025. The announcement was made during today's police board meeting. Afterwards, CBC asked Palmer about the controversial thin blue line patch, which has been worn by some VPD officers, but also become a symbol for some white nationalist groups.
Well, anytime somebody down in the United States does something and co-ops a symbol of policing, that is, of course, of concern, because that's not the meaning of it, and that's not what it means to our officers. And our officers have no ill intent whatsoever when they're wearing that patch. There's no racist overtones or anything like that. It's service and sacrifice.
Palmer tells CBC he sent an email reminding officers of the VPD policy, which states they cannot wear anything that is not part of their standard issue uniform. More than 7 years after he was killed during an encounter with Vancouver police, a coroner's inquest will be held into the death of Miles Gray. The 33-year-old Seashell man died in a backyard in Burnaby in August of 2015 after he confronted a homeowner for watering her lawn. A Crown report found officers restrained Gray's arms and legs, kicked him and punched him, pepper sprayed him, and hit him with a baton. In 2020, prosecutors announced none of the officers involved would be charged, in part because of the lack of witnesses and uncertainty around his death. But the Office of the Police Complaint Commissioner did restart its own investigation. The inquest is set for mid-April. Richmond RCMP have found and dismantled an alleged sophisticated forgery lab. They say someone was producing identity theft material.
Pretty elaborate. You're going to have some level of sophistication and to be able to do this. Not everybody can just start manufacturing stolen identity.
The investigation started in November of 2022 after U.S. Homeland Security intercepted identity theft materials that were en route to a residence in Richmond. Officers found thousands of dollars of equipment that produced fraudulent driver's licenses, credit cards, and permanent residence cards. The man arrested could face multiple charges of identity theft, forgery, and fraud. Well, a major BC city is staying silent over serious allegations around how it handled confidential information about a $1 billion wastewater project. An ongoing lawsuit is part of the reason for the lack of comment on the breach. But as Justin McElroy reports, it also has to do with how politics are done in Coquitlam.
This is Coquitlam Mayor Richard Stewart.
And so I'm here to make a plug for getting rid of the plugs and flushing only the stuff that's meant to be flushed.
That was in 2019 when Stewart was the chair of Metro Vancouver's Liquid Waste Committee. And it's what his city manager did while he was in charge of that committee that has Coquitlam in, well,
poo. Unfortunately, it's in the middle of a legal matter, and I am somewhat unable to comment.
So what is Stewart talking about? And what is legal matter that could cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars throughout the region? It all has to do with the wastewater plant, which deals with the things dancing behind Stewart. Metro Vancouver hired Acciona to build one in North Vancouver.
This new plant will become part of Metro Vancouver's network of wastewater treatment plants built to protect public health and the environment.
But it was going over budget, and it wasn't meeting target deadlines. So the Metro board had a meeting, went over the evidence, and decided to fire them. Richard Stewart had that evidence via a secure username and password. He gave the city manager, Peter Steplin, that username and password. Now, it's not uncommon for mayors to share confidential information about regional issues with their top staffer, except Steplin's daughter worked for Acciona. Steplin had the confidential information open on his computer, and it's alleged that his daughter took pictures of the information and shared it within the company before they were officially told about the firing. Now, this information became public a month ago, and it resulted in headlines everywhere. But the response from Coquitlam?
I'm frustrated as well because I would love to be able to describe this more fully because it's not as it's being portrayed.
According to court filings, Steplin told Coquitlam the leak happened when he left the room. And a month before the lawsuit became public, he decided to retire. But that's really all we know at this point. The city's handling of confidential information is implicated in dueling lawsuits worth $750 million, and the only public response has been the quiet retirement of the person at the center. The senior MLA for Coquitlam is asking why, but the answer may lie in its political culture. Coquitlam doesn't have a party system. Their councillors rarely disagree. It means consistent governance, but also where public conflict isn't part of the DNA.
You don't tend to get people spouting off or, blowing their top. I would think if you were in a place where things were more divisive, certainly there would probably be a lot more going on.
In other words, Coquitlam is boring, which often in politics can be a good thing. But if a city needs greater scrutiny, sometimes the place can be too boring for its own good.
Holiday airline Air Transat is shutting down operations in Vancouver. By July, it will close its office at Vancouver International Airport. The move will result in 200 flight attendant positions being cut. The company says the jobs will be transferred to Toronto and Montreal. Impacted employees can choose to be relocated if they want to stay with the company. The Canadian Union of Public Employees, which represents the vast majority of flight attendants in Canada, plans to negotiate with Air Transat so affected members receive adequate severance pay or moving allowances. Well, it's good news for BC's forestry and logging industries. The province is giving $50 million to the Forest Enhancement Society of BC. The money is part of the 2023 budget and is primarily meant to fund the collection of fire-damaged wood and its distribution to pulp mills that need material. The funding will prioritize keeping pulp mills in rural communities afloat amid a shortage of product.
The money is going to go where it's needed most, to communities that are hit by downturns in the forestry sector. I know this kind of support can't come soon enough, and we're working hard to translate this into results in your communities as quickly as possible.
This news comes after last month's curtailments in a Prince George pulp mill that resulted in lost jobs and reduced product. Well, a shortage of volunteers is hitting organizations across the province, and the problem comes as there's an increase in demand. Yasmin Gandam has more on how some groups are being forced to scale back.
Since the age of 5, Girl Guides has played a big role in Diamond Isinger's life.
What I want to see now, today, is this next generation, this current generation of girls, have access to the same opportunities that I and thousands of British Columbian women have had access to.
But the opportunity is dwindling because of a lack of volunteers. Across the province, the wait list to join Girl Guides is at 1,200, forcing the organization to rethink its model.
What we're looking to do is make sure that our organization can be agile in keeping up with the expectations of today's volunteer.
The Big Brothers program in Surrey is struggling too. It needs at least 38 more volunteers to meet demand. It's had to stop accepting any children from the area.
Surrey is such a big city in Vancouver. There's a lot of families that live there, but we also see the quantity of children needing a mentor be the highest.
Current volunteers worry the shortage could have troubling impacts on the future of Big Brothers.
The youth that participate in the program, there's also a very high likelihood that they will join as volunteers in the future. With a slowdown in matches, with a slowdown of new people joining the program, it can ultimately affect how many families can receive this support in the future.
Many groups say the volunteers simply did not return after the pandemic, and the shortage is being seen across the province, particularly affecting youth and seniors.
Basically, the most marginalized people, the ones that could benefit the most from a volunteer, the volunteers are not there. And so that's really going to affect organizations and how they think about, we might need to get more staffing, we might need to pay somebody.
For now, it's a desperate plea to the public to help keep organizations alive. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, ICBC has released its list of rejected vanity license plates. Every year, the insurance corporation gets around 10,000 requests for personalized plates, and more than 300 were rejected because they were deemed offensive, suggestive, or political. Piggy, piracy, and narcos were denied because they promoted bullying or crime. Copyrighted names are also not allowed. So Sprite and Honda, well, they were turned down. Too Fast for You, according to ICBC, supports speeding. The full list of banned plates can be found on ICBC's website. So, Joe, I had to look this up. It needs to be between 2 and 7 characters.
Okay.
So I'm thinking I may request the license plate INDBATH.
I think you should.
Anita Bathe.
I think that's really good. Yeah. I think this is also great Sunday reading to read the full list. I got to come up with mine, though. I'm thinking something like It Gonna Rain, but like ITGN
GNA.
GNA-RN.
Yeah, love it.
Okay.
That's very you.
See you in the parking lot. It is not going to rain, actually, in the next 24 hours in bulk, but I am watching the slight chance of a shower overnight tonight and tomorrow morning. But high pressure is still our story. I'm just seeing a few showers around the Pacific Northwest, trying to sneak into our high pressure system. I wanted to show you what this morning looked like because we did get the sun earlier today. I know it disappeared for the second half of the day, but watch as I take you through the morning. We actually started off with some fog, and then look at that. You can see the sunny spots on the city below as the skies parted. It really was a beautiful first half to the day before those clouds moved in, and that's what I'm watching for when it comes to those showers overnight tonight and tomorrow morning. Also, sunrise tomorrow, 7:59. First time we've ticked over to the 7 a.m. hour, so it's happening. Morning temperatures around 3 and back up to a 6. Anita, it is going to be a beautiful afternoon. I've got some more rain and some more sun in the forecast.
We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, if you watched our show earlier this week, you may remember we here at CBC are interested in doing some special programming about love in all its forms, and we've already gotten some great submissions. Whether it's a windswept romance, a parent who always showed you patience, or a friend who helped you move a couch up 3 flights of stairs, we want to share your story with our audience. To nominate a special someone, email us at bcasks@cbc.ca. That's bcasks@cbc.ca, and put the subject line Love Story 2023 in that email. We'll do our best to share it in one of our next broadcasts next month. As millions across the world mark the Lunar New Year and welcome the Year of the Rabbit, the Vietnamese community will be celebrating a completely different animal, the cat. Here in BC, some are trying to create awareness that the upcoming year is more than just about one animal.
Hi, my name is James Lay. It's the Year of the Cat in my culture, the Vietnamese culture, and what we say for the Lunar New Year is Chúc mừng năm mới, which means Happy New Year. Most people know this year is the Year of the Rabbit, but for me, I was born in the year that I feel is the Year of the Cat, and I relate to cats. Another 12-year cycle has happened, and this is my year to be more lucky. My mother would say that this is our lucky year, and I say our because this was also the Year of the Cat was also the year in which my parents were born. So this figurine, my mother gave it to my partner and me last year, and so my mother, I guess, knowing that this year would be the Year of the Rabbit and there'd be a lot of rabbit-themed things in the stores, figured that we could probably use a cat because that's what Vietnamese Canadians would celebrate, it being the Year of the Cat versus the rabbit. When I was a kid, we would celebrate by gathering as a family, wishing my parents Happy New Year, and then my parents would give me and my 3 sisters Lisi, or the lucky red envelopes, and inside would be money. We would also just eat some traditional Vietnamese foods. I just remember having lots of sticky rice, which was really good. And then sometimes we would wear the traditional áo dài, which is the traditional Vietnamese dress, and I remember my sisters and me, we would sometimes, on some years, wear that. Over the years, you see that the stamps would show a rabbit at the bank or at the grocery store. They would have ads that are saying Happy Lunar New Year. They would also say Happy New Year in Chinese characters. But then there'd be a golden rabbit or a rabbit on like a medallion of some sort. And I'm really happy that people are recognizing Lunar New Year, but it just makes me feel like as a community, us Vietnamese Canadians, we're a little bit forgotten, that we do celebrate it just like our Chinese Canadian and our Korean Canadian friends. We're also different. I just feel like I'm not seen, and all I'm asking is that I be seen as a person and as part of my community.
School snacks, things like that, I notice never go on sale anymore.
With the cost of groceries up more than 10% Canada-wide, it might seem like the days of a screaming hot deal are dead. After the break, though, we'll show you one BC woman determined to keep her food costs low. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream. No matter how cold it gets, a Regina woman makes sure to leave the cozy warmth of her home to spend time outside with her 2 sons. Having a toddler and a newborn with nowhere to go during the pandemic lockdowns was challenging for her. She is now pushing herself to spend 1,000 hours outside before the end of the year.
No matter how cold it is, Erin McRae and her 6-year-old son Anthony leave the cozy warmth of their home behind for fun outdoor adventures.
You can let go!
The duo wants to spend 1,000 hours outside together this year.
Being outside is the best for everything. Not just exercise, but like mental health and happiness and sunshine, even when it's freezing cold.
People all around the world have accepted the same challenge. It all started with one Michigan family back in 2011. Ginny Urich remembers struggling to keep up with the overwhelming demands of having 3 children under the age of 3. Then she read that kids should spend 3 hours outside daily. She initiated the 1,000 Hours Outside Challenge.
1,000 Hours Outside is about bringing back balance to your life between the real and the virtual. The premise is simple, but the impact is profound. Aim for getting outside, be intentional about it throughout the year, and it will change many facets of your life.
Dr. Melissa Lem says there are also health benefits. The family doctor started a nature prescription program here in Canada.
Spending time outside, the research tells us, is one of the best things that we can do for our health. It improves medical conditions from high blood pressure and cholesterol issues to depression and anxiety and even ADHD in children.
McRae says the second Anthony gets outside, he forgets all about the screens. On this day, he wants to show off some tricks. She and her son have tried this challenge in the past. They explored the province looking for new outdoor experiences, but found that recording 1,000 hours in a year wasn't easy. It took them 14 months. She doesn't consider that a failure.
I think other people should try it just to get outside and try new things.
McRae says getting fresh air with her son is what really counts. Will McClernon, CBC News.
Grocery prices have soared over the last year in BC and across Canada, jumping 11% in December compared with the year earlier. It's stretching people past their limits. The CBC's Joel Ballard now with an in-depth look at some of the ways Canadians are getting creative to cut costs.
If you've been to the grocery store lately, then you know. The cost of food just keeps climbing and climbing, with the typical bill for a family of 4 expected to jump by more than $1,000 in 2023. So, I wanted to know how people here in BC are coping and what creative ways they've found to deal with the high prices.
I personally save thousands of dollars a year in groceries by just going online and using different apps.
First 3 rows last year were high trellises of Romano beans, which looked really beautiful and were super productive.
And I also wanted to understand what these rising costs mean for their lives in the long term and how we might fix this for good. I'm in Surrey outside of a grocery store where we're about to meet this no-nonsense grandma named Erin Schultz. Now in her house, she has 6 mouths that she has to feed. She has her daughter, her 4 grandchildren, and she's come up with a genius way to save hundreds of dollars when she goes grocery shopping. And so how have you noticed that the rising cost of food over the last year has impacted your family?
Basically everything for kids, especially school snacks, things like that, I notice never go on sale anymore. It's items that used to be $1.99, 2 for $5 are now, $3, $3.50, $4 each. Cost of produce is absolutely outrageous. And I think that the more processed foods is almost a cheaper way to go.
Have you had to change how you shop, the way you shop, what you shop for?
Well, I don't ever pay full price for anything, ever, no matter how badly we want it. And I just basically took to the internet and started researching ways of saving money.
Erin uses an app that collects all the flyers from local stores. She finds the cheapest price for products, then goes shopping at a store that offers price matching.
I personally save thousands of dollars a year in groceries by just going online and using different apps.
Should we shop?
Let's shop.
Okay. Okay, so we bought the exact same 8 items. Mine at regular price cost $36.48 total. What was your total?
$22.85 on 8 items.
And 8 items, I can imagine for a house of 6 people.
This is
not a normal shop.
No.
What do you think about the fact that we're now in this place, in this country, where you have to figure something like this out, where you have to find an app that can help you save hundreds on your groceries because the price of food is so high?
It's terrifying. It's terrifying. I mean, you think of this kids in school. What are they eating? What are your parents having to get a second job to be able to put fresh produce? I mean, a head of lettuce is over $6 right now. A simple head of lettuce is $6. It's ridiculous.
As food insecurity grows across Canada, it's forcing people to adapt not just on a personal level, but also a community level. Hey, I'm Joel.
We grow food in the community, by the community, and for the community.
When COVID happened, a lot of our programs shut down, and then we began to think, well, okay, we need to pivot and begin to think about what services we're providing. And so out of that came the Yard Garden Harvest Project.
The program's still in its infancy, but here's how it works. Last season, 5 different neighbors volunteered their lawns, and more than 1,200 pounds of fresh produce was grown. Now, this lawn might not look like much right now, but at the height of the growing season, it produces food like broccoli, cherry tomatoes, gailan, garlic, all this produce that is then used for food security programs. When I think about it, I think there are so many yards in Vancouver, there are so many yards in Metro Vancouver. This is a model that different communities can be replicating.
I think this should definitely be something expanded to as many neighborhoods and cities as possible, because one of the really neat impacts is how it changes space and changes people's perspective on what a yard can be. It doesn't have to just be grass or, shrubs. It can produce food. And I think that's a really neat part of the project.
And Joel is with us now here. Joel, we mentioned at the outset that food prices are up pretty much across the board countrywide. But can you focus in on BC for a minute? How are we faring here?
Anita, it's not great. In BC, the rate of inflation for food purchase at stores from December 2021 to 2022 was also up 11%. And if we look at some staple items, we can see just how expensive food has gotten. Fresh fruit, for example, is up 12.6%. Frozen and fresh chicken has jumped 13.4%. Eggs, an item I always used to think was a bargain, is up 16.5%. And butter has soared, up 23.7%.
Yeah, no kidding. I definitely notice it when I'm at the grocery store. So your reporting included some of the ways that people are getting creative using apps or even other people's gardens. All of these solutions sound really good, but can they actually address the core issue of food insecurity?
Well, that's the real question, Anita. Like you mentioned, discovering creative solutions to high prices is fantastic, but it also highlights the systemic issue we're facing in this country, that increasingly people are having trouble affording their groceries. And these solutions are just Band-Aids, and it's having a real impact on people's lives. In tomorrow's segment, we'll touch on the difficult personal decisions some people are having to make because of food insecurity, and what needs to happen to really tackle the underlying issue.
Looking forward to seeing that tomorrow. Joel Ballard, thank you.
He didn't check it. He didn't do any of the things that he was supposed to do.
Alec Baldwin now facing possible jail time after a deadly shooting on his movie set. After the break, what we know about the new charges he's facing in a case that's already changing how movies are made.
This may seem a strange place for hockey fans to rally.
One of our brothers need our help, so we're here to try to inspire him more.
Outside the hospital, former Canuck Gino Ojek is being treated for a heart condition he says is terminal. Doctors say he has months, possibly weeks, to live.
And such a warm-hearted guy, you know, and even though he was known for being such a tough guy, he was still just a very cool guy.
Ojek was known as a fighter and enforcer on the ice. Last week, the 43-year-old wrote a candid letter about his illness and said, "Your Gino cheers were my favorite. I wish I could hear them again." And today, he did. Gino! 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 Then Ojek surprised the crowd by coming down from his room.
See, I'm even getting kisses from men now. Yeah, so I wanted to say thank you. I can't stay too long because I gotta get some medication and stuff, but I really appreciate you guys coming out.
Appreciate you, Gino.
Thank you.
Gino.
Okay.
Ojek grew up on a reserve in Quebec and became a role model for First Nations youth.
Even though he's an NHL star, he's just really friendly and real awesome guy to be known.
Family members were touched by today's outpouring.
He's staying very strong. He's been a fighter all his life. And, this is going to be his toughest battle, but, he's ready for the worst.
Fans are planning another rally next month. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
Tonight marks 1 year since a tragedy along the Canada-U.S. border in Manitoba. A family of 4 trying to cross illegally was found frozen to death. As Karen Pauls tells us now, while police in India have laid charges, police here are still looking for answers.
Here's the border right here. It probably would have been, just over right in this area here.
Sheriff Matthew Vig points to where his officers caught 7 people after they walked illegally over the Canada-U.S. border 1 year ago.
It's urgent because we know a person's not going to survive too long out there in the cold, so we try to, get there as soon as we can.
Not far away in a snow-covered Manitoba field, RCMP discovered the frozen bodies of a couple from India and their 2 young children. U.S. officials have charged a Florida man with human smuggling. This week, police in India laid charges against 2 men believed to have helped the family get to Canada. But RCMP officers still don't know who met the Patels once they landed at Toronto's Pearson Airport and how they got to the Manitoba border.
They traveled 2,000 kilometers within Canada, and just hoping that people will come forward, because we know someone facilitated them, someone saw them, they stayed somewhere.
Now, a few new details about the timeline and a plea for tips.
January 14th to the 16th, 2022, they were staying in the Mississauga area and the city of Welland, Ontario.
You know, sometimes when you talk about this, your heart starts pumping.
The deaths continue to haunt people in Winnipeg's Gujarati community who jumped in to translate and plan the Patel family's funeral.
People are still can't understand, you know, how it happened. You know, it was like, see, even in this cold weather, we don't like to stay outside. How can you tell someone to go 30 below in extreme wind chill weather?
The RCMP say they believe the Patel's deadly journey was a thought-out and organized operation, likely run by a human smuggling network. Their relatives in India tell us they're still in mourning and haunted by their losses. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Actor Alec Baldwin will be charged with involuntary manslaughter in connection with the fatal shooting on the set of his movie Rust. Cinematographer Helena Hutchins was killed when the prop revolver Baldwin was using to prepare for a scene went off. Baldwin maintains he did not pull the gun's trigger. Chris Reyes reports.
After a year-long investigation, Santa Fe's district attorney says she's absolutely sure Alec Baldwin fired the gun that killed cinematographer Helena Hutchins on the set of the movie Rust in 2021.
He didn't check it. He didn't do any of the things that he was supposed to do to make sure that he was safe or that anyone around him was safe. And then he pointed the gun at Helena Hutchins and he pulled the trigger.
Baldwin was rehearsing with a revolver when a live round hit Hutchins and director Joel Souza. Souza was taken to hospital and survived. Baldwin and the movie's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, are facing 2 counts each of involuntary manslaughter.
Involuntary manslaughter is like making a mistake. It's not intentional, but it's still serious because it's still an act of killing. So what they're saying, the prosecutors are saying, is that Alec Baldwin had full control of this weapon.
In a statement, Baldwin's lawyer said this decision distorts Helena Hutchins' tragic death and represents a terrible miscarriage of justice. Mr. Baldwin had no reason to believe there was a live bullet in the gun or anywhere on the movie set. We will fight these charges and we will win.
I think the producers who were charged with hiring the crew to begin with put very inexperienced people in the positions that they should have never been in, i.e. the prop master and the armorer, who had no experience.
Rust was only the second movie that 25-year-old Gutierrez-Reed worked on as an armorer, the person in charge of all weapons on set.
This was a really fast and loose set, and that nobody was doing their job. There were 3 people that if they had done their job that day, this tragedy wouldn't have happened.
Last year, New Mexico's safety agency fined the film's production company for safety violations on the set. Because the charges involved the use of a gun, Baldwin could face up to 5 years in jail if convicted. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
A political showdown is unfolding in Washington, D.C. The U.S. government is about to hit its debt ceiling, reaching the legal limit it can borrow to pay the bills. As Mukta Gebrselassie reports, some Republican lawmakers don't want to raise it until changes are made about future spending.
$31.4 trillion. The U.S. reaches its borrowing limit as calls for Congress to raise the debt ceiling get louder.
This is about economic stability versus economic chaos.
But Republicans want to make a deal, major spending cuts in exchange for raising the debt limit.
Set a budget, set a path to get us to a balanced budget, and let's start paying this debt off and make sure the future generation has as many opportunities as we do.
The White House says what's required for now is the no strings attached solution.
The debt limit has been something that has happened 3 times. If you look at just the last administration in a bipartisan way, it is something that should be done without conditions. We should not be negotiating around it. It is the duty, the basic duty of Congress to get that done.
And it's been done 78 times since 1960, regardless of which party is in power. Waiting on politicians to work it out, the Treasury Department is taking extraordinary measures to pay the bills for now.
The extraordinary measures are things like not investing government employee contributions into the retirement funds, things where you can catch up later and make everyone whole.
But any quick fix is temporary, expected to last until early June. If no deal is reached by then, the U.S. could default on its debt. Experts say a recession could follow, and the consequences could have long-term global implications.
It could raise our borrowing costs for decades to come, which would ironically actually raise our government spending and raise our debt.
Whether or not that happens all depends on what goes on in there. And don't expect any deals to be announced anytime soon because Congress is not in session this week. Magda Gebre-Selassie, CBC News, Washington.
Well, tens of thousands of public workers went on strike today across France in a day of mass protest against new pension reforms proposed by the government. More than 200 rallies took place as part of the nationwide strike that disrupted transportation, schools, and other public services. It's a response to the government's plan to raise the retirement age by 2 years from 62 to 64. Unions say it unfairly impacts working-class people. They're proposing tax hikes on the wealthy, but French President Emmanuel Macron says he'll push ahead with the reforms to keep the pension system solvent despite the resistance. Well, in a surprise announcement, New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says she's stepping down next month. An emotional Ardern says her 6 years in office have taken a toll.
And so today I'm announcing that I will not be seeking re-election.
Elected at the age of 37, she was the country's youngest leader in more than a century, but says she no longer has enough tank to lead the country. During her tenure, she is best known for having to handle crises, including cracking down on assault-style weapons after shootings at 2 mosques in Christchurch. Ardern gave birth during her first year in office and has made headlines when she took her baby to a UN peace summit. World leaders are sending out tributes and praise, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. It's like the movie has come to life. Coming up, the Quebec dog giving birth to a plethora of puppies.
Land Back is a CBC original podcast where we uncover land theft in Canada and look at how Indigenous people are taking it all back.
And that's what empowered nations and empowered people to just literally steal land.
This is a consequence of your actions.
And it's time to give land back.
Land Back is out now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Baseball fans in Japan are crying foul over plans to redevelop an historic stadium. More than 10,000 have signed an online petition hoping to save the landmark.
People that are doing this are going to make a lot of money, but the citizens of Tokyo are going to regret it because they're going to lose a really beautiful, quiet, relaxing spot and a great place to watch a baseball game.
Meiji Jingu Stadium in Tokyo is nearly a century old. It once played host to baseball legends Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. It's one of the few stadiums left where Ruth played, and it's often compared to iconic ballparks like Wrigley Field and Fenway Park. The stadium is slated to be torn down and rebuilt as part of a project that includes several high-rise developments. Well, a family in Quebec might be feeling like they've been cast in a small remake of the 101 Dalmatians. Their family dog, a Dalmatian named Queenie, has just given birth to 16 puppies. Take a look.
It takes 6 hours for the 16 puppies. It's around 20 or 30 minutes by puppies for the delivery, so it's take a long time. Never we expected for 16, never. We'll try to find a good family for each of them, and maybe if we have one at the end, we will see what we will doing with that.
Johanna, you've got quite the Dalmatian vibes going tonight. I'm spotting a dog lover.
Yes, let me be clear, dog lover, even though I inadvertently am channeling Cruella de Vil vibes. This is full-on Dalmatian lover. Queenie, you did so well. We're going to talk about the weather, no matter what, and I know you're just going to have to visualize it a bit, if that's all right. Well, we've got there we go. Live cam straight to current temperatures. 6 degrees in Vancouver. We've got some showers and some sunshine, as I mentioned, coming up in the forecast, and we're going to get both of it in the next 24 hours. Just want to show you the current temperatures across the country. Queenie, about -4 tonight for the new mom. -14 in Winnipeg, and that's really where we're seeing the coldest of the air in through central Canada. But nothing sort of below seasonal. It's pretty mild, almost from coast to coast, seasonably speaking. Okay, high pressure, as I mentioned, really our story for the next couple of days. This is the low pressure system I'm watching hitting the northern coastal sections. So we're mainly dry, other than that slight chance overnight tonight and Friday morning. It's Saturday that system moves into us. But watch as I take you through Saturday. Here's to Saturday evening, and that system pushes inland. All of that purple, that's snow for the interior. So this is good snow. We are sort of running, other than the Okanagan, sort of on a 30 to 40% deficit in our snowpack. So it'll be nice to get some fresh snow in the interior, and high pressure right behind it. In fact, it's going to waste no time moving in for Saturday late afternoon through Sunday. Temperatures are cooling down as we head into the weekend. We're getting a bit of a drop in temperatures thanks to that high pressure ridge. So Saturday afternoon highs starting to stay down around -1 for Princeton, -1 for Revelstoke. A little cooler for Sunday, again, as that high pressure sort of introduces some air from the north. And we'll notice that cool down as well through early next week in Metro Vancouver. Afternoon highs, and this is straight model data, I think being a little generous here, we might struggle around 3 or 4 degrees as our afternoon high early next week. So just to recap, showers possible overnight tonight and tomorrow morning. Look for that sun, though, by the afternoon. Rain, about 10 millimeters to start your Saturday. I think it might clear before the sun sets, though. Beautiful Sunday, but crisp. Morning temperatures will be below the freezing mark, so look for some frost on the ground as well. Flurries at this point for Monday. We'll have to keep an eye on if it develops into anything more. And cold but dry for the rest of the week. Not bad.
Not bad at all. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
A Newfoundland town has been trying to clean up an abandoned fish sauce plant. Not only is the deteriorating structure an eyesore, but it stinks. Residents are concerned about the potential impact on their health. And as Rob Antle shows us, we're beginning to get some troubling answers.
A breathtaking view that can take your breath away, quite literally.
We can't even open our windows. It's bad, really bad.
The smell is just unbearable.
This plant used to manufacture fish sauce. It hasn't operated in about 20 years, but vats of the sauce have been fermenting ever since, enveloping parts of the community in a foul odor. Perhaps worse than the smell lingering around town are the unanswered questions lingering too.
Because we don't know what we're dealing with.
We've uncovered some old testing results that have sparked some new concerns about what's inside the abandoned plant behind me. 4 years ago, the CBC filed an access to information request. Now some answers, and we're showing the town's mayor what we've learned.
Why don't you get to have a look at that?
After reports of effluent flowing into the ocean in 2016, the Federal Environment Department swooped in. They found that when fish were exposed to the substance, it killed them within 15 minutes, described as acutely lethal. All this is news to the mayor.
And never came to the town to let us know how toxic this really is to fish and the environment. Like, this is not right.
That leak was fixed, but news of the test results has renewed concern.
Well, if it's killing fish, what's it doing to the people that's living here?
You know, something got to be done, my God.
Environment Canada says its responsibility was to protect the fish, which it did when the pipe was sealed. It steered questions about health and odor to the province, who confirmed the town did put in a funding request for cleanup, but that request did not meet the necessary criteria. It adds the plant owner is responsible for cleanup. But the company dissolved 17 years ago, and the owner hasn't been heard from in years. The mayor says it's time for action.
We know what's here now. Let's just go and clean it up. All levels of government. Let's work together and get this done once and for all.
He says that's something the town of 309 people can't do on its own.
It's a limitless dish.
A modern take on a classic dish. How a local chef is taking ramen to the next level. More on some of his delicious variations after the break.
We were always happy together. And I know we would be again if we wouldn't have a war in the world if we were back together. But now we got all kinds of worries, eh? Yeah.
They've been separated for over a year.
They were in a home, pretty well on even keel with their needs and what they wanted. And Mom started to go downhill. She ended up in the hospital, and then we knew she couldn't go back into the same home Dad was. They couldn't offer the same care. And that's still where we are now, in 2 homes, in 2 different communities.
It's not good, I'll tell you that. You know? And I find it bad. I think she finds it a lot worse. But she gets lonely, especially nighttime, you know. And if I could be there all the time, she'd be very happy. Yeah, she wants me there all the time.
So we won't take your walker now. I'm all right.
So between myself and Sid, and on the weekends, the grandchildren kind of pick up the slack. And every day, you know, we have to get his walker in the car or his wheelchair in the car, bring him down. There's level 3s that need to get in, and they need a bed worse than Dad. But he's approved. He went through the process of being assessed, and he's approved. So to me, if he's on that list, you know, it's not only just the bed, it's the effect that this is having on him, his health, Mom's health, our mental status, our lives. You know, we really have no life outside of going back and forth there. and I don't foresee anything in the future. And even the nurses, like their lives of mom, you know, they're putting up with mom ringing and ringing and ringing continuously when we're not there. What a difference it would make to them if dad was there, you know? So it's not just you're improving someone's life by putting them in a bed, you're improving our quality of the whole system here.
That's my biggest problem right now, is getting me back in the home. If we could find someone to find a way to get us back together. And you know, we're together where we should be. Why should you take someone that lived together for 67 years and separate them? Don't make sense, does it? I don't think it do.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Celebrate the city's most impactful leaders with Anita Bathe at the annual Vancouver Magazine Power 50 Awards. Join the fun February 2nd at the Terminal City Club. Learn more and get tickets at vanmag.com. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
And now, a Hollywood director and content creator on Instagram has made it big with his use of slow motion capture on the red carpet. But Cole Walliser has a local connection. Walliser is actually from Steveston in Richmond, and he has 2.4 million followers on Instagram. You may have seen the Glambot videos from the red carpet in recent years. Celebrities ranging from Noah Schnapp to Nick Jonas and Jamie Lee Curtis have all taken part.
Glambot is a high-speed slow-motion camera that E does on their red carpet show. And so it's this camera that shoots at 1,000 frames a second, so we're able to really slow down time in a moment. But then the tricky thing is the camera actually is on this robotic arm that moves really fast. So you get this really kind of surreal effect of like drifting through time in a super slow motion, and it gives you the most glamorous kind of a shot that you can imagine on the red carpet.
Walliser went to McRoberts High School, and that's where he says he first started filming things like his friends skateboarding. Awesome stuff. If you live in Vancouver, chances are you've probably eaten at a ramen restaurant. With hundreds of traditional and contemporary styles, this seemingly simple dish harbors immense creative potential, and one local chef is tapping into that.
My name is Carlo Bueno. I'm the chef owner of the Ramen Club. I'm from Whistler originally, and then I moved here to Vancouver 5 years ago to learn about ramen. Soy sauce seasoning. I didn't have a career or anything. I didn't have a direction in life. I decided to work at a ramen shop so I can eat ramen for free. Boils for 2 minutes. That's when the obsession began. There's 5 components in a ramen. There's soup, there's noodles, there's seasoning, aroma oil, and toppings. And there's no rule with what you can do with these 5 things. There's hundreds of different regional styles, and I also like to create my own style. During the pandemic, I started selling ramen kits just to test if my ramen is good enough. Then after that, I started doing pop-ups until I found this place. I'm sharing a kitchen with Bow Down. When customers arrive, they get 2 menus, one from Bow Down and one from me. So our specialty is, it's called chintan, or clear soup. It is different from the mainstream ramen here in Vancouver. So the big shops, they have tonkotsu, which is the creamy, rich pork broth, or the toripaitan, which is the chicken version of that. We wanted to serve something that is not seen very often in Vancouver, which is the clear broth. We have soy sauce base, doing styles that are not well known, people are really up to it. And so I think the uncommon styles will become more popular in the future. I love everything about my job. I eat ramen every day.
We'll have to check that out. I just had some ramen the other night. That broth was miso-based, but also delicious. Now I'm hungry for it again. That is our show for January 19th. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you tomorrow.